Hey gang, we'll get started. So what I'd like us to do is to share a couple of things. Maybe I'll write this down. I don't know. So Isai, so you're going to tell us your name. This could be your class nickname or your Tlingit name. Uh, we have a special guest today, so she will introduce herself in a moment. And so you're going to tell us your name, and then you're going to name one land animal. We call them Atkatu Adi. One water creature that we call Hintak Adi. One flying creature we call At Kaudleyiji At. And one plant that we call Kayami. So what you'll find, if you don't know already, is I'm a big fan of lists. And so when it comes to nouns, this is how I think about the natural world in Tlingit quite a bit. There's a supernatural world as well. We'll just start with this. So you'll tell us your name, then you'll say one land animal, one water animal, one flying animal, and one plant. And if you consider it a flying animal, that's totally fine. You consider it a water animal, that's fine. I'm not gonna grade your Tlingit biological sort of categories. But this is just to get us in the habit of recalling things when it's required, which is one part of language. I think one part of using a language is being able to say the thing. Another part is being able to move yourself into the language at will. And I think they're kind of related. So we kind of start with these bite-sized morsels. And so I kind of like to just sort of list these things because later we might pick one of these things and I'll say, tell me some things about that thing. And now we're getting into physical descriptions, behaviors, and I really like that kind of stuff because then you're not just naming something, but you're talking about what it looks like, you're talking about what it acts like, or you're giving cultural information. We did a game one time in Natasahin, car cross, where we had a big hockey bag, which was oh so Canadian, full of stuffed animals. And they were all very local things. It was really neat how many different things they had. And we were spending a lot of time naming these things. And then we sort of cooked up this activity, which was we all broke into groups. There was a fluent elder speaker with each group. We had about 6 of them there. They all went up and picked a thing secretly, and they went back and they wrote 5 descriptive sentences about it with this challenge. Like, you can't tell us what it is. We have to guess, but you can't put the most obvious ones first. So if it's like a beaver, you wouldn't put the big 2 front teeth there first. And so that's kind of where we started. And then there was one group, and I think their first one was As Dechluni Owa Uchaich. It always eats tree bark. And so someone said, Segedi. I said, Taik. And someone said, Chashakach. And they said, Taik. And I said, Techwasaku, because I don't know what else eats bark, right? What do you think it was?
Beetle?
This one.
Da?
So yeah, and then they said, Duchawu Owe Kutan Sakwat Yachnatich Tak Athlete. Its fur is brown in the summer, but it's white in the winter.
Da. Da.
Da.
Is ermine? Ermine.
It's da, like
Oh. Gach. Gach.
ugh, right? So it was a rabbit. And so once they said, let's get these long ears, I was like, ugh, but I had no idea they ate bark. And so it was a really fun activity because it got me to think about these different animals that live around us and how we might describe them. Oh, somebody wrote up there. Yes. Uh, so let's start with that. And everybody will go, and then our special guest will introduce herself. I'm so happy to see her. I'll go last. You guys, and I like to do this thing sometimes where we'll move into one of these categories, and I'll say, let's just name as many of these as we can without anybody repeating one. And that's another, but we'll do that later. For now, it's okay if somebody already says it. It's fine. Whatever. But in the future, we try to say, somebody already said it. It's already been said. We already heard that one. Okay. So we'll start in the room.
Say, Tlingit, you cut yourself. Vulcan.
Okay. Uh, okay. Kayani. Yake. Yake. Finish cheese. And tell us your name one more time. Yake. And who wants to go next? Did you have a question? I saw your hand was up. Barbara?
I'll go.
Okay.
Ishtishan Yuchatu Asa. Intak Hudzi.
Okay.
Luk Yesh.
Okay.
Yana 8.
Finish cheese. Suhain kanik isai. So tell us your name again.
Ishtishan Yuchatu Asa.
Finish cheese. Okay. Kus chechutan wait ahat. Kuschan. Chechutan. Yewa. Okay.
Ak ayachat kanatsak looked ak sacht
Suhain kanik isai.
stock
Okay. Okay. Itra.
Satugaya. Blank. Land animal. Sigedi.
Okay.
Tan. Yesh. Yana 8.
Okay. Finish cheese. Suhain kanik isai.
Satuk.
Satuk. Cheese.
Christian, you cut yourself. Butch, Tayatayet. Gach, Sikshak. Dean.
Okay. Guns cheese. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Christian.
Okay.
Ichaul achsaye. Ad good to adi. That one. Tisk.
Okay.
Asha. Gun dada gugu.
Okay.
Chukan.
Okay. Guns cheese. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Ichaul.
Okay.
Yana 8, Yuhat Yasak, Janwu, Ka Hintakutsi, Ka Saksi,
Okay.
Shush.
Owa. Suha in Kananik Isai. Your name again?
Yana 8, just in the class.
Kasanakaya. Seek. Ka. Yai. Ka. Kanish. Ka. Kinchei.
Okay. Guns cheese. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Kasanak.
Okay. Kasanak.
Hoots auhu yuhatuasak zisk a uk ka shea.
Okay. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Hoots auhu
Okay.
yuhatuasak.
Okay. Guns cheese.
Shatin Charlotte. Yuchatusaf. Speak. Keep. Yana 8.
Okay. Guns cheese. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Shatin Charlotte.
Seeing show what? Okay. See, I'll try and get to the board for you guys. You probably can't read it. All right, who wants to go online? Ichtidechu. Adisa du tuasaku yedetqua. Goog.
Yahuch yuhatuasak. Hicht. Nak. Quaishk. Kahwech.
Okay. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Yahuch.
Gunas cheese. Iti aqoa adusa.
Aya
Goog.
hatlak ach yacht Tlakanese was on plague u
Adusa wa eqoa.
kunak
Okay. Gunas cheese. Iti adusa.
Khataya. Aldegan. Yuchatusaf. Kushta. Talk on Nasi. Digitgaya. Kunt.
Okay. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Aldegan. Yuchatusaf.
Gunas cheese. Okay. Yedetqua adusa.
Yedikuk ayuchat dua sak. Ulakan ka kit ka kedladi ka ekahwen.
Okay. Suha in Kananik Isai.
Yedikuk a
Goodness cheese. Yedetqua adusa. Goog.
Can you hear me out there?
Yeah. Isachwaach.
I can't tell. I'm pushing that thing, but it's not helping at all.
I saw it unmute, but I didn't hear anything, but now I hear it.
Okay, Chataya. Kwantlein je chat do a sock. Ha, what's it? Yai, Hurt, and Tin.
Okay, and so
Hachu Kinchi.
oh, you okay? You okay? So how you kind of make aside?
Kwantlein.
Goodness, cheese.
Uh,
I do say that's pa cook.
Agnes,
Okay.
goed. Jij, Digigya, Keshesh.
Goodness, cheese. So how you kind of make aside?
I don't get it.
Tell us your name again.
Agnes, you
Ach,
had to say.
Achenes. Goodness, cheese. That's pa adusa. You okay? Hetwasa uti. We're allowing repeats. It's totally okay.
Anyanach Kla Yuchat do a sock.
Oh, you okay? Cook.
Douche sock. Kayech. Kluf.
You okay? So how you kind of make aside?
Anyanach Kla.
Goodness, cheese. It's a little bit quiet on your end. I could hear you, but it's a little bit faint.
Okay, sorry.
Hishwasa oti. Okay. Did everybody go?
No. Shakuzi Shawat Yochut do a sock.
Okay.
Chalaklatch. I can't think of any more flying things, so I'm repeating Satsi and Jayi.
Okay. So how in kananik isai?
Shakuzi Shawat.
Oh, we have two. Shakudzi, you're both just Shakudzi. Is there one more? Two more? One more. Let's see. Everybody not go yet? She went.
Chataya.
Okay, Cook.
Yaktushi Yuchat do a sock. Ka Tawe. Yao. Ka. Kinchei. Guk. Guk.
Yeah, okay. Oop. Tuha in kananik isai.
Yaktushi.
Ganesh cheese. Yakecha Yuhon. Kwashkatsu. Konea achsai. Atkatu ati. Signun. Hintag ati. Ach. At kaudle yiji at. Shayar. Kayani. Siksh. Geowa. Kone. Ganesh cheese. It's just a good, we'll start getting in the habit of sort of being on the spot sometimes. And then in the future, we'll go through these like one list at a time. Then we'll throw in like Neiti Adi, which would be household objects. And we'll just try to, and the goal when we do that is to kind of establish an order and just go around and not to try and see who can win, but just see how many things could we collectively name, because I think we could go for a long time. And then if you can't think of one, you just say hooch, and we'll just skip you and we'll come back, and if you think of one, that's fine. If not, no shame. This is a no shame environment, shame free since 2011. But we just try to do these also to kind of challenge ourselves. So what I would say is maybe we'll just try it. When we come back next Tuesday, we'll start with Utkatu Utbi, and we'll just see how many we could name, and we'll try not to repeat it. If we repeat, it's not a big deal. I'll just say Dewa Tua Ach. We already heard it, and then that'll be your challenge to think of a different one. And you know, sometimes I like some light competition, but I try not to get into like who's the best, because I think that's not always a productive type of thing, but more just sort of let's challenge ourselves in our ability to retain stuff, because we're going to start building these chunks and then putting these chunks together. That's really a big part of language learning. And then there's use is the biggest probably thing, but then building these lists is also pretty big, because then you'll see this thing and you'll know there's names for all kinds of things. We did body parts one time, and you know, I was like, we're all adults, whatever, you say whatever you want. And then there's a bunch of them where you could say sh, because body parts can have body parts, so we know sh is a head. So you could say, someone says, and someone was there and they were kind of new, you know, and so it was fine. But then I noticed that everything the person before them said, they would say sh after, and it worked. So they said kek, and then he said kek sh, so fingertip. I was like, all right. And they came back around, they said ki, and he said ki sh, which is like a kneecap. I was like, all right. So I think the person next to him caught on. So when it came around the next time, he said hlau, so, which is a male organ. And I'm sure it would have been correct, but I said, don't you do it. Everybody laughed, embarrassed. Anyways, maybe we'll do that one too sometime. But it's fun to just sort of get through these lists of things, and then sometimes to come out and say, were there things that you didn't recognize? Were there words you wanted to talk about? This is just a good sort of thing that you can challenge yourselves to as well. If you're not sure what to do next, you can always go in and sort of work on your lists. It's sort of it's a check the box type of a thing. And then as you go through the world, just question yourself, do I know the Tlingit name for that thing? Because we sat down with a couple of elders and they were talking to us about nouns. And they said a noun is not a person, place, or thing in Tlingit. It's something's name. And when you learn its name, you just know that thing a little bit better, right? And sort of like a person. If you didn't know a person's name, you kind of don't really know them. But if you know their name, then you know. And you're also saying what this thing has been called in a particular place for thousands and thousands of years. So you're engaging into this different relationship with these things. And so, you know, I was watching, we asked these two elders, Kingesti and Kehinuk. We said, tell us what you know about red and yellow cedar. And they had a day to get ready, and they got ready. Kehinuk said, I'll start. And so I gave this kind of speech as they got started, and he just started reading this list of names. And he just started reciting all these different trees. I was just listening to him. I was like, And he got done. He said, in Tlingit, he said, we're Tlingit because we know those names. So, you know, vocabulary is a big thing, but it's also just sort of, it's not just table is this, chair is that, but it's like, that's what that thing is called. So anyways, we have a special guest with us this evening, and I would like for her to introduce herself and share with us whatever you would like. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Go for it.
If you want to come up here, I can make a seat for you up here.
I'll just drive you over there.
yuhatuasa. Ishkahitwan. Takwanda. Ishkoa. Yanyete. Akutach. Chief Husiki. Esye. Bakiri. Ach. Adiyu hakawa shuye. Yahayu atangikach. Ya achtuasiku. Chtekatwasi. Achtuasiku. Adi tuasiku ye. Yayu atang. May I say it in English? My name is Margaret Dutson. I live here. But I told you where I came from. It's a long story. All the way from Kalkan, Angoon, we ended up in Taku. So I'm really a Takupan. And this language that you're learning is so valuable. You haven't got any idea what value there is in it. Whenever I say something in English and try to translate it into Tlingit, it just doesn't seem to add up either way. But what I want to tell you is two gentlemen would come to each other and say, how are you? My name is, and so on. They shake hands, and they would say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. You know, that to me doesn't make up for the way we speak Tlingit. When two gentlemen get together, achtuasiku ade echsitini. Au gentasotashich. Yut kwana yachat. Kayutach. Ach ish ka'achla. They begin to talk to each other like that. And you know, it's with so much reverence. It isn't, well, how are you? Fine. It's done with so much respect for one another. And I still see that today, and I'm so happy I can say that. I had a hard time learning English because I came from a Tlingit home. I was born into a Tlingit home. So my first language is Tlingit, and I learned to speak it well. And I had a little hard time with English for a long time, but it's okay, I learned it. But I want you to know the value of what you're learning tonight is something, it's a repetition. Don't get upset with Lance when he tells you over and over. How do you learn? How do babies learn things? It's always a repetition. You learn as you go, and you keep everything in mind that you learned. Write it. When you go home, don't forget it here. Just don't leave it here. Pick up your books and learn. You know, that's how I learned English. It isn't because my mother and dad couldn't speak English too well. My dad did okay, but my mother was another one. We would always ask her for something. She would say, I say no. And I thought to myself, my word, Mom, you're really tough on what you say. And she always told us, I not dumb. I know what I say. And my sister and I would look at each other and just about giggle. But finally we learned the value of how Mom was trying to learn English. She used to ask us, how you say this? We'd tell her, say it again, and she would say it. Repetition it really teaches you a lot. And you have the most wonderful instructor. He is my friend, Professor Taff. You know, I'm surrounded with so many good instructors, and I'm just so happy. And the teachers sitting over there, I've been surrounded with so many wonderful people, but still, I speak Tlingit very well. What I would like to do someday, some who are just learners, they're not saying it just the way old timers, the way I would say it. But I just let it go. I figure one of these days I'm going to get them to sit down and really teach them how to say it. I have a husband, he's a white guy from Colorado. He's been trying to learn how to speak Tlingit. And the other night we were talking about something and he said, why don't we say it in Tlingit? So I started mentioning a few words in Tlingit and he said, oh, I can say it. I said, say it. And he just couldn't get and all those words. And we would look at each other and just bust out laughing because it was kind of fun to teach someone who was wanting to learn and still not speaking it the correct way. So don't feel bad when your instructor says, do it again. That's fine. He's trying to get this thing inside of you because this is a hard language. I'll tell anyone. If I didn't grow up learning it, I'll tell you, I don't think I would know how. But I speak both languages pretty well because it took repetition to learn English. And Tlingit, I just grew into it. And when I went to school, I almost had an interpreter because I didn't know how to speak English. And those were tough days. But I learned English. And God is my witness, I really had a hard time with it. Just like you're struggling with Tlingit. I don't blame you. I had a hard time with English too. But it took repetition, repetition, repetition. Oh no. I told my kids, that's the only way you learn anything. If you don't stick with it, say goodbye to what you're trying to learn. So with this, I want you to know, I'm so glad I came and spoke the Tlingit language so that you could hear first class what it sounds like. And you're a real good instructor. And I have a lot of fun when we get together. When three of us got together, I don't know how we worked. George Davis, him and I. Sometimes we would just laugh because our way of speaking is so fun and so funny at times. You just can't help but be, when you're a Tlingit person, you can't help but be smiling and talking and laughing because our language is fun. We laugh at each other. So someday when you come to a point where you're learning, if I'm still going to be here, I might be moving someday. But when I'm around, ask me. I'll show you. I got 3 or 4 kids that were going to college, and they had to have all of their Tlingit before they could graduate. And I stuck with them. I wasn't feeling well. Just about the time I didn't want company. Marge, can you help me? And so we stuck with it. They got their degree, all of them. That's what I'm saying. Stick with it. Hang in there. Whenever Lance says something new or this comes up, make sure you learn. Just really learn it. Because it's not like reading, writing, arithmetic. It's pretty hard. You're going to find it many times very hard. But you'll always thank the person who has taught you. And Lance is teaching you right. I was listening to him sitting there. Some of us, some who are learners, have a hard time with it, but it's okay. It's just like Richard last night. He was talking to me in Tlingit, and he said, "Am I saying it right?" I said, "Kind of right." Marge, tell the truth. So I would tell him, and I finally told him, "No, you're not saying it right." But we went over it over and over. He still didn't get it. Because he said, "I can't get that word from here to here." He said, "It just doesn't come out right." I said, "You're right. But the harder you try, the more you want to learn, you'll make it." So even I want to tell you, you're going to make it. You just be a good learner. You'll make it. Goodness, cheese.
No way.
Yes, geez.
Hey. Yes.
All ladies always need help. I don't know what I'd do without Alice.
Nora had a poem, and she said the census taker came to visit her grandma and said, "How old are you?" And she said, "Keshtatu, Keshtatu." And he wrote, 52. Means you don't count. But there's a book of Raven stories coming out probably this year, if not early next year. And it's been about 50 years in the making. And the earliest storyteller was recorded in about 1950. And he was probably in his 80s. I don't know. So he was probably born in the late 1800s. Because that's Nora Dowenhauer, who was 90 a couple of years ago. And it was her mother's father, Kuchain, Frank Italio. And his Tlingit is very hard. And so I would sit down with Shakshani, Marge, and with Kahuan Ish, George Davis, and we had this really fun setup where we had big earphones and big microphones and the computer. And we would listen to this stuff. And Susie James, we probably spent 100 hours with Susie James, just because she talks so fast and such a high level of Tlingit. And we inherited this work from Richard and Nora Dowenhauer, who started it with the Alaska Heritage Institute. And so Marge was just so invaluable to that, because I would hear things and I could write it and I'd say, "But I don't know what that means." And then she and George would sometimes they would talk it out and we would sort of come to this understanding of what they were saying. And it was just amazing to be able to work with Marge and with George and to be able to translate that old Tlingit. It was so much fun. And all these Raven stories, and you really get a finer understanding. I see a lot of artists and good for them, but they're doing lots with the box of daylight and stuff. But to really get into what the storytellers talk about, the ones who really know that story. And Kinkau Danique, Paul Marx talks about this a lot, is that the things that he heard, and then Nora, she would talk about the ways that she heard some of these stories. And then to just sort of, as you learn Tlingit, you become one of these, you just live in that in-between zone, in between Tlingit and English, as a translator, as an interpreter. So, okay. Anybody got any questions as we sort of shift a little bit? We're going to do a light kind of grammar talk, and then we're going to move in and just learn a bunch of sounds. Or practice. We already know these sounds. We're just going to practice them.
How did she say we would laugh at ourselves? Would do.
Was it?
Which would do.
Which would to the shoe?
Which to the shoe? Yeah.
Whoosh would to the shoe again?
Laughing.
We'd laugh at ourselves.
Which come do us? Which come do it to a shoe? Come do a shoe.
We laugh at each other.
Let me see. I'm laughing at myself.
Oh, you came. Yeah, so whoosh to the shoe is, I think, another one. We were laughing at each other.
The other person.
Uh-huh.
It's me.
Ah.
Kaudi is the other person.
Kaudi.
Kaudi is Jewish Kaudi. He's laughing at himself.
Ah, okay. Sheesh. Anything else? Okay. So let me do, those of you who are online, always let me know if I forget to do things like show you what's on the screen, because sometimes I do that. Okay. So there's kind of two big concepts I want to talk about. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll do just some sound practice. And so one of the big differences between beginning Tlingit and intermediate is the first month or so we just do beginning Tlingit. We try to do it kind of fast, and we don't really come back and do that other part again. You just sort of say, here's what this thing is, here's what this thing is. You've probably been through it in some form or another. Go practice it, go teach it. In particular, you're at a point where, I was saying at a meeting the other day, I said, we've got, I think, over 50 people enrolled in Tlingit this semester, which is so exciting because I think there's 100 speakers left. So if there's 100 left and you got 50 who are actively learning, that's good, right? And so I was really excited about that. But as you become speakers yourselves, you need to become teachers. Find people that you can teach. Because one, we need to. It's like the cure for the zombie disease is Tlingit, so we got to go give the antidote. And two, you're going to find out what you don't know, because there's a bunch of things where I'll be like, oh yeah, I could tell you about that thing, right? And then I kind of fake my way through it, and I'm like, I got to learn how that thing works. And so it'll help you find more of your blank spots, right? And then we'll just fill in some of those blank spots. But find somebody that you can teach, and especially like, I'm going to teach these people or this one person all the way. Not like, let me teach you a little bit, let me teach you a little bit, I'll teach you a little bit, because then you don't have to go and climb the ladder. So, the way that Tlingit is structured, and we put things up visually, we read it, we listen to it, we say it. We're trying all these different things to try and put this whole other grammar structure into our mind. We're also unlocking something that's already there, right? Yitutas awati hashish kohas. They already put that thing inside you, and you're gonna learn how to sort of peel the layers away. And so it's this two-part thing where you're going to meet it in the middle. And I think you do a lot of repetition, you do a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, a lot of talking, a lot of listening, and you also just have faith that the other parts are going to be kind of put together for you. So the structure of Tlingit, there's a lot that rides on the verb. A verb is like a word, right? It's one, we write it as one word. The things that come before it that need to be part of that verb might be other words in front of it, and we call that the preverb. The words that come after it that need to go, like you can't, when you take them away, it totally changes the meaning of the verb. Because you can have a whole bunch of other stuff before and after, but it's not part of the verb itself. It's just maybe specifying some things, or, it's part of the communication around it. But there are certain things that say, okay, that's part of the verb itself. So there's the word, the preverb, the postverb. You're always going to get more stuff at the beginning than at the end. Tlingit always works that way. The types of things you're going to get in the beginning are whoosh or wooch, like we heard with that one phrase, which means to each other, chush, to yourself, us, them or they, and some directional things, like you say, nechte wugut, he went home. Nechte is all part of the preverb. You can't take it away because it just changes the meaning of the verb itself. Things you're going to get after the verb, nooch is a really common one. It means it's always like that. There's not a whole lot beyond that. There's not a whole lot that comes after, right? So with the verb itself, a similar structure where there's going to be a prefix, the stem, and the suffix. The prefix is so much more common, so much more used. There's a few things that will come in the suffix, mostly marking repetition or that it doesn't happen anymore. But in the prefix, you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of things are they're mandatory. The stem itself is primarily the verb root, and the root has meaning. So usually when you have a Tlingit verb, there's one root there, and it means something. And then you put a whole bunch of stuff around it to just sort of start to shift it in these different directions. So shuk is laughter or smiling. That's a verb root. And then there's different, you have wushuk, to laugh, or to, and then you can have yawashuk, to smile, and you can have kawashuk, which means to laugh at something. And so there's different ways that we can change that verb. In the prefix, you're going to have an object sometimes, and that means the verb happens to that thing. A subject, that's the one who does the verb. Then you're going to have sometimes thematic stuff that always has meaning. The end of something, the head of something, the face of something, the surface of something. And we'll see how these things kind of combine. Ka and ya are ones you're going to hear a lot. They're built into a verb. Then you're going to get this space where the conjugation happens. That means to change the verb in terms of when it might be happening and what we're kind of communicating. But this is where the perfective marker is. So when you say, you hear that w sound kind of in the beginning, that means that perfective marker has been activated. Right? I like to think of this thing as like a switchboard, and you're going to turn these things on in a certain combination, and out pops the magic verb. The challenge for us as second language learners is we got to kind of process all this stuff a little bit differently than a birth speaker. Like if you grow up speaking Tlingit and there's Tlingit all around you, you internalize this stuff. But then as a second language learner, you've got to spend some time goofing around with this stuff. And so we're going to do that. Okay? Then there's also this thing called a classifier. Every Tlingit verb has a classifier. Okay? So let's take a look at what a classifier is. Any questions on this stuff? I almost drank the microphone.
For subject and conjugation, or for conjugation and conjugation, you're saying that's where the perfective marker is? And
Yeah, there's a few different things in there that are going to turn on, sometimes multiple things, to say, oh, let's put this in the future.
Okay.
Let's put this in the perfective. Then there's just certain things you turn on right in there. They'll always pop up in that same spot.
Like gachtu, is that the conjugation or is
The
that?
gach part is the future.
Okay. But that's the first part of the verb. That would be no preverb on that one?
No, because the preverb is sort of a separate category, right? So you could say whoosh gachtu, and now you've got a preverb, and then gachtu is the prefix.
There can be no preverb. Many times there is no preverb and it just starts with the conjugation. Okay, cool.
Gachtu means we're going to. It always is that way. Gachtu, we're gonna.
So you don't always have all of these categories. They need to be filled. Sometimes it goes 0, 0, 0, 0. And
Absolutely. Like there might not be a thematic thing on there at all. But if it's there, so it's an important question because if you put a thematic prefix on there like ka or ya or sha or something, it's a whole new verb. If you change the classifier group, it's a whole new verb. And these are big like grammar concepts, so we just dabble. Then we'll just go back and learn a bunch of sounds. But as we start learning these phrases again that you've done in beginning Tlingit, now we're going to say, see the classifier, see what's going on there? We'd be like, identify it and talk about at least sort of spotting it. That's where we start. Okay, there's the classifier, there's the root. I don't know what they're doing, but there they are. Right? They're like these mystery guests at a party. Who are those guys with the funny hats, right? Two sahas. Okay. So the Tlingit classifier. This is a fun thing, but it's also kind of a nerve-wracking thing at times. Every verb has a classifier. Classifier belongs to a group. That group tends to kind of do things. So we talk about zero group, S group, L group, SH group. And as you hear a verb, when people tell it to you, you're going to learn how to hear the classifier that's in there. And sometimes it's a challenge because it's mixing in with other different things. But for now, here's the sort of the very fast overview. It's like we're going to drive by this thing and be like, let me tell you about this thing we're driving by right now. Right? I can tell you a couple things about it. One is if you change that group, you have changed the verb. It's a different verb. Two, the main reason the classifier will change is to say we're categorizing something, it's some specific thing, which is why it's called classifier, because it's classifying the type of thing. Or we're not saying it happens, somebody made it happen, right? And so this is the difference between I'm sick and you got me sick, right? And so that's a couple different things. So for an example, let's say we're all at my house and we're all just relaxing and we're drinking tea or coffee or water, whatever we like. And I look outside the window and I say, Kate chatin. How does that translate? Kate chatin. I see a dog. That's the only thing I'm telling you. There's just some dog. That's it. But if I had already told you about this nasty dog comes around digging up my flowers, pooping in my yard, knocking over my trash, just being just a ruckus, I would say, we kate chwasatin. Different verb. Chatin, I see it. Chwasatin, I see that particular dog. It's just a little bit different. This is why I say irsatin. Yake irsatini, because you are a specific thing. So this isn't just to see a dog. This is that dog. That dog I've been talking about. So now this is a little bit more of a dramatic moment, right? Like maybe I spill my coffee. I'm like, Kate Rosatin. So now that's the specific thing. Same like yati and siti. Yati is for something to be. Siti is to be a member of a group because the classifier changes. Okay? Yeah, zero is kind of a default. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we got these symbols too. You're going to see these zero markers. Like, what is this, calculus, right? And so we mark some certain things as a zero, which means sometimes it doesn't look like there's a classifier, but there actually is. But it'll look like nothing. You say, achjite. That's a zero classifier, right? Give me the thing. Achjite, shtakatana. Give me all the money. So another reason the classifier might change is what we call agency, which means I'm not just seeing it. I'm watching it, right? I am making the verb happen. That's also different. Those are all the same root, teen, right? To see. I see a dog, I see that dog, and I'm watching that dog. Because when he starts to rip my garden up and poop, I'm going to spray him with a hose, right? So that's what the classifier does, is it starts to just sort of shift what the verb is doing. And sometimes there's a little bit of meaning that's added, right?
But it's not, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's not way at the end.
It's always right before the root. It has to always be right before the root. So there's a verb root and then the classifier is right before.
So would you repeat the watching?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here, let me write them so that we can. Maybe I'll just write bullet points. So the first one would be cake katin, right? So this is number one. Let me make that a little bit. Okay, so this is number one. I see a dog. Right. Now I'm going to say wakate, so it's like that dog, kind of. Chwasitin. Right, so now the si is there. Right? Anybody want to guess what the classifier is for this one? It is. It's that. Okay. The other thing is we start seeing how these things sort of get put together when other things are around them. Because that's another tricky thing with Tlingit. It's like, oh yeah, it's this. But it changed into these other things because these things were around it. Of course, right? I like to say, like, Tlingit grammar is generally like you're learning how to play cribbage from Raven who wants to win. Right? So he's like, oh no, that's one of those things. Now, right? You're like, wait, I thought it was this thing, right? And then way cake chasatit. So now I'm watching it. I'm doing it right now, right? 3 different verbs, similar but different types of actions. And so sometimes we'll spend time like doing this kind of stuff and like teasing it all apart. What do these different things mean? You'll also see that cha is in each one of these. Cha, because I'm the one who's doing it, right? So I would say iyatin, yisatin, ishatin. That's how I would say you're doing those things, right? So one thing that we're going to learn is how to start changing these verbs. We're going to have lots of different tables and things to sort of have with us so that we can sort of do this. I think at first, like kind of awkwardly looking stuff up, and we're all patiently waiting, it's fine. But eventually being able to recall this stuff and then predict it with really high accuracy. But a lot of it is understanding all these little components and what they might be doing. Okay?
So those parentheses relate to that chart.
Yes, specifically to the classifier.
There's no LA. There's no. Oh, there is. Look at that. Okay.
L group.
What? All right.
Okay. So why would there be an LA and an SI and an SA? So there's, okay, and why is there a Y? Okay, so we get lots of questions coming in. This is good. So we use this thing, we named it in Teslin, we gave it 2 names. And it's this guy right here, this Y with the 2 dots over it, that has a name. We call them shewaki Y, which is pretty fun. It means a Y that has eyeballs. And so there's a sound that really used to exist in Tlingit that kind of only exists in Teslin and Klukwang right now. And we call it the gamma. But what happens is we say it's a Y, but it could change. And one of the things that it's going to change, and sometimes it'll just disappear. And you'll learn these particular patterns, right? And so as we sort of go through and we start to construct Tlingit, you'll start to learn that there's these patterns, and it does make sense. It's kind of a lot of information all at once, but it does make sense. So the other thing to know about the, no worry, don't apologize, just ask.
So those symbols that what the gamma, the SI, the LA, those symbols refer to a formative of what the word is doing, the form the word is taking.
Yeah, they kind of refer to like, what is the verb doing? Like the verb generally means this, but then we're going to say, what is the verb doing? And then you'll see the classifiers start to change, right? So one thing that might change is, if you look up a verb, it's going to show you what the classifier group is. That means it's going to be one of those four. And that there's a reason why it would be one of those four. Like when we heard wushuk to wuddashuk. Oh, it changed. The classifier changed, right? So there's two reasons a classifier might change within this particular group. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. One is the classifier is going to, that's what the classifier is for that verb. It has to be one of those four. So how do you know which one it's going to be? One is it's the default mode is what we call -I. So the default mode is going to be the 0, da, sa, s, which is the snake's favorite classifier. Thank you, I'll be here all week. Shla, sh, sha, and sh, which is the librarian's favorite classifier. So, the only reason it would go +I, because Tlingit marks that the verb is complete. That's what it means when it goes +I. That's it. That's all it is. But Tlingit marks whether verbs are complete or not. And that's what it does with the classifier. Okay? That's the only reason it goes +I. So all your perfective ones, all your state verbs, so you say, chet, yanik. I'm sick, right? And whenever we practice, we always want to say, we're not trying to get sick. Nobody wants to be sick. Dear universe, we're only practicing. There's the ya right there. Chet, shitzin, shle. There it is, right? Ishikudzi. There it is, shle. Right?
Could you repeat that again? -I is the default.
It's the default. +I means it has been completed. The verb is done.
An example?
Yeah, an example would be
Like that, you saw that dog.
yeah. So I could say ich sitin, I saw you. Kesh ichwasatin, I didn't see you. Right? Every future verb is going to be -I because it hasn't happened. +I just means it happened. The verb is done. It reached that state that it needed to reach.
So how would you say I saw you?
Ich sitin. Ich sitin.
Versus I see you.
It's the same thing.
Oh.
So, which we had to take a break because I think we're gonna, but it's all good stuff. Here's the reason why. Tlingit does not conjugate verbs for time. It conjugates verbs for whether or not the verb has happened. That's it. Time exists in Tlingit, sure, but it doesn't. In English, time drives the language. So I think it's hard for us to think of time being as kind of irrelevant. And I think early, like people who started studying Tlingit, they're like, they don't mark things for time. It's like, sure we do. But it's just like, that's not the important thing. The important thing is, has it happened? That's the important thing for Tlingit.
What if it's just like, I guess the part I don't understand is if it's, well, there's a lot I don't understand, but if it's like a state of being or if it's like a long-term, like if you're sick, you have been sick, you're going to continue to be sick. That's just kind of like a long-term, has it been completed?
A state verb is really good because like, it's got to be that way to be that way, right? Like if I'm strong, right? I got to be strong or else be strong, right? And there's other verbs where it like, to know something, chwasiku. It has to be in that mode or else you don't, because you either know it or you don't. Like, it's not, we will look at examples. We will, and so what we're going to do is we're going to slow it way down. We're kind of like, hey, look at that grammar boat way out there. That thing is crazy. And we're like, we're not going to swim to that thing. We're going to put our toes in the water. We'll go up to our ankle. And so we'll actually slow way down and just start practicing sounds. And then phrases from beginning Tlingit. But we're working towards this stuff. There's going to come a point this semester where you're going to look at that and you're like, I know what that is. And maybe you don't, and this is that in-between zone of Tlingit grammar and Tlingit linguistics and Tlingit language and English, because the English part of your brain, I firmly believe, is like, no, right? It's like like an only child, and then you bring another kid in, you're like, hey, why don't you share these toys? No, right? It's like I think that part of your brain just feels like, I'm gonna be destroyed. Right? I don't know. I've got my theories on it, but there's a plus D thing, but I think we don't need to do that right now. We'll do that some other time.
It's not on the chart.
No, it is. It's right there.
There's that bottom line,
Oh,
row.
I see it. Oh, I see it.
Don't look at it.
Okay, it just means the subject is also the object. Did it to myself, doing it to each other. That's pretty much all it is.
Is that reflexive?
Yes, it's reflexive. Middle voice. This is a good time to take a break. So let's take 10 minutes, decompress. We'll come back and we'll just say something.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. What would be a verb that would be? What would be a verb that would
I guess I didn't.
Oh, I thought it was.
Isn't kusiat is hot?
Kusiat is cold.
Oh, it's cold. Kusiat.
What is art. Okay.
I do.
Shirley Kendall.
the weather one? That's I think not.
Shirley Kendall.
All the weather stuff.
I think you might
Like all that really.
used to be
We spent a long time on it, so we actually.
St. Clair. Used to be Shirley St. Clair. She really likes to teach orthography. She likes to teach.
Okay, Marge. We got to cook up a couple of words here. Wasagachtu sa map.
Asio,
Wasagachtu sa map Tlingit chenach.
map,
Map.
map.
Geta
yeah.
yacheti. Anya
Don't you
haiku.
know, it's one of those things that have not, it's just like a countertop.
Mm-hmm.
The Tlingits didn't have it. But what I used to hear, a kak and to ataya.
A kach yantu kuchat aya.
Uh-huh.
A kach yantu kuchat. Hi.
In other words, the boat can't make it without going to a certain place without a map. Kalkayan to that.
Okay.
And, yeah. Kalk.
What about Anyaha Yukuk? Anyaha Yukuk.
Oh, on the Hayiku.
Would that work?
On the
On Yaha Yukuk. Or Akach Yantukuk.
Okay, the first word is I got the tail end of that.
On Yaha Yukuk.
Oh, on the Hayiku.
Yahayi, like a picture.
Yeah. Is that you get that word from the dictionary? Uh-huh.
Like at Yahayi.
That is Atihayi Kakana. Yasyanasat. They're using the map to get to a certain Yahayi Kuk.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I think that is a better.
Oh, Yahayi Kuk.
Yeah, because it makes it very plain that it's not some imaginary thing. They're using something very important to get to a place. Ayahayi Kakayasyanasat.
What about dictionary?
Yeah.
We don't have a word for dictionary.
Well, it's because, Lance, we all have different languages from different parts of Alaska.
Yeah, what?
Even Huna Alata, I think I learned more, better speaking Tlingit is from Huna, because the elders were my friends. So I used to listen to them a lot and talk to them. And so I feel like Huna is all really my home.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Even though I was born and raised here.
Okay. Okay, there's cheese. Awesome. Question? Okay. Okay, so let me share a couple of ideas, like more learning ideas on how to sort of internalize some of these lists of things. Shkuyesh is a language program coordinator in Tlingit, Teslin, and he had recommended this book, and there were some parts of it that I really liked. And so one of the ideas here is trying to take a Tlingit name for something and to push it into different parts of your brain. So as you're learning the name of something, like Wasus, Zisk, Yesh, Chak, one of these things, especially new words, and also to maybe reinforce things that you just find yourself kind of forgetting sometimes. There's some of them that are always kind of on the edge of your memory. And so one of the ideas is to write the name, like let's say Chak, if that was the one we were picking. So I would write CH apostrophe, high-toned A, K apostrophe, Chak. And I would just keep saying it, Chak, Chak. And then I would count the letters, the Tlingit letters. It's a 3-letter word. And I'm just sort of trying to get this logical part, analytical part of my brain working. How many letters is that? And we go back to our alphabet, and every one of these things is a letter. Not like the C and the H and the apostrophe, but CH apostrophe is 1 letter, right? And we sort of subscribe to this idea of Tlingit spelling. I think it moves us into spelling faster, right? Except for names. Names are always hard. So that's one thing, spelling it, counting the letters. Another thing is drawing a picture. And it's not an art class, but just for yourself. Just draw a picture of that particular thing while you're saying the name. Because what you're trying to do is access this creative part of your mind and push that name into the creative part of your brain. Then write a sentence from your life experience, but use the Tlingit, and write it in English, but use the Tlingit name. Right? We're in Sitka, and the Chak was in the tree above us singing. right? Or whatever. And so this is sort of getting into your, and you're not making it up, it's from your actual life, because now you're pushing this word into your long-term memory as well. So this is other ways to just sort of continue to practice learning things. When I first started learning Tlingit, can I borrow your dictionary? I had this. This was there were two dictionaries that we had at the time. This was 1995. This orange one, and then the yellow Tlingit verb dictionary. And so I went through, and these are written by category, and I just made these flashcards of every single word that was in it. And I would be on the bus, I would be walking, and I would just practice. Sam, and flip it over and see if I, and I would test myself to see if I knew what those things were. And sometimes I would pull ones out at random and see if I knew that. And then when I had them, I went from English to Tlingit. And then when I felt like I had that, I just mixed them all up. So they weren't in categories, because I was kind of memorizing these different patterns. I wanted to just know those actual words. But these are just other ways to just continue to learn nouns. Learn names for things, right? And these are just good practice.
Are the online people with us right now?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was used to seeing their faces on the edge of the screen.
Yeah, so when I screen share, I don't put them, or otherwise they'd see themselves and it would take up some of the space.
Okay.
So when I screen share, I try to use the whole slide.
Good.
Okay, and then I'm just a little, we're on the side. We're on this, or I'm on the side. So. Okay. So let's talk about vowels. There's vowels and consonants, right? Tlingit has quite a few of each. I believe the way to think about vowels is Tlingit has 4 vowels. Each of those vowels has 4 different forms. Short, long, high, low. But it's the same vowel. And we know that because they can move back and forth. Heen could become hin. We say heen talk. We say hin talk. Right? And you're going to see that. You're going to see that the vowels move between being long and short and between being high and low. So we practice both of these things because English has just these separate vowels, right? And the running joke from Don Burnstick is he says, well, he'd say, I guess I would say it a little differently, which would be, yeah, you English speakers, you got your vowels? Well, he says, okay, you white people, you got your vowels. It's A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. He says, we natives, we got our own vowels. It's E, I, O, U, A, and sometimes Y. Click, we got our own vowels, right? And so it's these 4, and that's what they are. But the thing you have to practice, is it high or is it low? And so some of you, when I hear you recite your, just think of a word, I was just paying attention. And sometimes we'll say things like, I might say, Wasatu asak yata. And a student might say, Kuhida, right? And it's like, just really do this upward thing, which is saying, I'm not quite sure. I think that's what it is. And that's what you're conveying through tone. Because English, that's how you convey uncertainty, right? But that's not how it works in Tlingit. So you can't bring that stuff into Tlingit, all right? Or else we're going to get just kind of funky, wavy words, right? Like, and they have this problem in all kinds of languages, right? So in English, this is a question. In Hawaiian, this is a question. So they teach people how to do that, right? So here's a kind of fun example from Hawaii. There's this thing called Pidgin Hawaiian, which is sort of in between English and Hawaiian with a dash of Portuguese maybe thrown in there. So I got a cab one time, and we're staying up on this hill. And the cab driver had to walk up and meet the cab. And she picked me up, and we were driving down the hill, and she said, real dry the rain here. And what do you think that meant? Real dry the rain here. How would you say that in just sort of Juno-ish English?
It's not, the rain isn't very wet.
The rain isn't very wet? Any other ideas?
It hasn't been raining.
It doesn't rain here very much, does it? Right? It was a question. It doesn't rain here very much, does it? Real dry the rain here. Right? And it was a question because it went up and came back down. So, this is something that we just think about so that we're not wasayati, right? And so I kind of exaggerate it and stuff. But we're going to keep an eye on that because that can affect the tone of our vowels big time. Tlingit does not use tone to convey meaning. Tone is built into words, and you can't mess with it. They can flatten each other out and do other stuff like that, and we'll look at that. But also, if it's long, keep it long. The thing that I struggle with still is I'll shorten. Everything gets shortened because I get nervous and I try to talk real fast. So, walking through these. And there's a fifth vowel. Anybody know what the fifth vowel is? I don't have it on this list.
Gamma?
Nope. That's a good guess. That's a consonant.
Why?
Oh.
Oh.
Goodness.
Yeah, so the only time you hear it on the coast is people say "Ganesh cheese" or they'll say "ho ho." It's that double shot like that "ho ho." Walter Soboleff, I saw him give this speech one time, and he did that 4 times in a row, like "ho ho, ho ho, ho ho, ho ho." And listening to it, I was like, something big is happening. Like I just felt that way, right? And so in Teslin, it's a vowel that is used if you would have this long, any sort of long O followed by any form of a K or an X or a G. We usually switch to just an O. So instead of kook, they might say coke. And that's a Teslin thing, right? That vowel fully exists there. And it's just something that we gotta, and then also like we say like hadla, especially when we see a license plate that says hot glah. Hot glah, right? But they say hado, and it means the exact same thing, right? Okay, so those are vowels. And it's not a lot, there's 16 there, but just, the length, the tone. Keep an eye on those things. Maybe you do that, or find something while you're practicing to make sure you're paying attention to those vowels. The EI one is always a little tricky for some people. That's just the A sound, that's what it is, right? Okay. So when we think about these sounds, where they're located in the mouth, as we practice them, we go from the front to the back, right, all the way down to the throat. And so there's some that are a little trickier, but we're not going to practice sounds. We could just kind of call attention to them, but this is something that you should be doing on your own, is just going through this sound chart. If you find ones that are particularly hard, just walk around and just make that sound all the time, right? Even though it's just, someone's like, why is that person going around going like, well, because I got it, right? Yeah, so we start up here. There's not very much in the front. I'll show you my joke in a second. Okay, so look at that symbol. That is a letter. And then we're going to add a vowel if it doesn't have a vowel already. We're just going to add the A vowel, either mostly at the end, sometimes right at the beginning. So we say wa.
Wa.
wasus,
Wasus.
wasus,
Wasus.
And there's a couple of things. Like we learn an artificial form of Tlingit. That's what we do. And one of the reasons we do that is because we tend to exaggerate things. The higher vowels are probably higher than most speakers. When we get to the sound, we might exaggerate that because we're really trying to practice it. As you speak more and listen more, you'll hear that you can actually tone down a lot of that. You can just soften it quite a bit. So that's one of the areas that we sort of wasus. It's not always like that high, right? I tend to like teach it pretty high because I want people to see it and to hear it. Ma.
Ma.
Masus.
Wasus.
Nobody in the world says masus, so but I'm not going to let this joke die. Here's what I went to Tesla and I taught this. I was like, just let me keep this joke. Tlingit.
That's what they say.
Kaaya. We masus. Yeya na cage. Moo. H kako awe wasus yeya na cage. Woo. Right? That's all I want is there's that one joke, okay? In the interior, a cow says moo. On the coast, a cow says woo. They like that joke better than in the interior you guys say me, but on the coast we say we. They like that joke. So they don't say masus, but they say masa, right? Yeah, I spent so much time on Photoshop making this work. Masa, gumdan, gam, seem, right? So it's like seems like it's raining. It's a nice pun in Tesla. But Tesla and Carcross are the only places where the M really pops up. Some old speakers in Angoon, like Bob Zuboff, love to throw it in there now and then. I find myself saying it sometimes. Masa CAT, just because I like it. Dialects are very fun. They're fun to explore, and they're also, it's not hard. Okay, so those are the only sounds in the front. So now we go here. Cha.
Cha.
Cheech.
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 That is a porpoise, not a dolphin. Dolphin has a different name. One time I was teaching and someone said, I said Cheech, and they're like Cheech and Chong. And I said, no, because that Cheech is high tone. There's another good one for you. You. Ah. So can anybody tell me the physical process, the difference between this one and this one? What changes?
You don't use your lungs or any breath when you sing.
Correct. You say, you make that sound without using your lungs. So, you know, as you're practicing some of these sounds, you can sort of take a deep breath and then make the sound and then open the lungs back up. But that's the actual sort of physical process. And that's why it comes out so harsh, because you got to push it out with your neck, basically. Your neck muscles and stuff you've got to push that sound out. The other thing that happens a lot when folks are learning is they'll go, there'll be like this little gap. And so sometimes you work on just sort of closing that gap. It runs right into the vowel. Eat.
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 So there's these names that exist, and there's a lot of the names, I think we talked about this the other day, that are shared between clans. Maybe we talked about it here. What was the other class? So you might have the same name that exists in two totally different clans, right? And maybe they're not totally different, right? So Yenyedi and Duklawedi both have a name, Ch'id-wu. For the Duklawedi, that name comes out of Klukwan, and that name, it means the chest of the muralet, Ch'id-wu. For the inland people, the Yenyedi, sometimes that name means a wolf who has a white spot on its chest. That's just kind of interesting too, because when you go sometimes with inland Tlingit people, I remember we brought Seydaya Mary Anderson to the beach. We're like, what's that called? What's that called? What's that called? She says, I don't know. Right? It's like, you don't have ocean creatures in Tesla. Hello, right?
Spark.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a classmate.
What's that?
Sorry, we have a classmate named Cheat Woo.
Yeah, well, Cheat Woo. He's Yanyedi. Da. Da. And sometimes, like, so that's an ermine. So sometimes we'll have the name down here in English in small letters, just in case you're not up to speed on your weasels. Yeah, which, get on that. Ba. Plate. Plate. So that, and there's a lot of words that are also like a color, right? Like yachyati. Za. Zait. Zait. And then there's plenty of words in Tlingit where this could mean multiple things. Stairs, boardwalk, a ladder, a dock. Ja. Jun.
Jinwoo. Jinwoo.
You're from Yakutat. Jinwoo.
Jinwoo.
Jinwoo. You're from Carcross. Janu.
Jinwoo.
Janu.
Jinwoo.
And then some inlanders, Jun. Like, what? 4 names? Right? Like these mountain goats, like, call me Janu. Hello. I'm from Carcross. Right? And so this is another fun dialect thing, right? As we sort of learn, sometimes there's specific, and this guy would travel, the inlanders know him, the Yakutat folks know him, we know him on the coast here. Sha. Sha. So there is not a voiced L in Tlingit. So we catch people sometimes saying, Lutseen or things like that. And we just try to sort of adjust that. This is just one of the things we point out. And we do a lot of fine tuning at this point, and that's one of the things to watch for. However, there are 2 speakers that we know of historically, regularly, in the place of a voiced N, would have the voiced L. So I don't know if we talk, so instead of Uhan, us, they would say Uhal. And my great-grandpa, Achtla, du Ish, Ankadachtien Jedu sagen, Klekach enach Bert Dennis. But he used to call himself But Dellis. Because he made that switch. Susie James is another one that would do that regularly. So like there's this part in the Raven story where Raven is talking to this octopus, and he says, so we'd say, Hagunak, Hagunak. But as she's telling the story, she says, Hagulak, Hagulak. It's really fun. Shoosh, 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 shoosh. Ah. Ah. Ook. Ook. This is one of the sneaky sounds, as the Downhowers famously coined them. The difference between the TL and this one is pretty subtle, right? And so we're not saying ook, we're saying ook. It's just a little more drawn out. It tends to go this way. The physical process for this is you're kind of got your tongue, the tip of your tongue just behind your teeth, and you got a little nice pool of saliva on there, and you're going to squish it, and you're not going to talk. Don't go like really face to face, close when you're talking to someone until you're comfortable enough with both your Tlingit and with the possibility that I might spit on you. So I knew a lady who was adopted by Judy George, and Judy George was Shluk Nach Adi. And sometimes I like to ask questions that I know the answers for. It's just something I like to do. And so there was a lady who worked at Search who had been adopted by Judy George. And I walked by and she was eating this giant king crab leg. And I said hi, and she said hi, and she's like, come here. And this was her exact words. She says, I'm a real Jewish mother. I'm just going to feel guilty all day if I eat this whole crab leg. Eat part of this crab leg. I said, I would love to eat part of that crab leg. So we're sitting there sharing this crab leg. And I said, hey, you were adopted, right, by Judy George? And she says, yeah. I was like, what clan? And she said, Shuknach Adi. And I said, oh, it's Shuknach Adi. And this big piece of crab flew out. Luckily, like I wasn't like looking right at her face, so it just kind of went over her ear. And I said, never correct you again. Ook. No.
Yeah.
Noosk. 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 So this one, the double A, especially with the KW at the end, something that I used to do and I hear people do a lot, like do a saw, is I'll hear them say do a sow. So if it rounds too soon, you get this ow sound, where you want it to go do a saw. So the rounding doesn't happen until after the consonant. Another one would be ya as opposed to yow.
But I have the impression that it's more Canadian to round before the K or the X than after.
That could be.
And your name, you're saying Auk. What say your name?
Say Tlawuk.
Okay.
Say Tlawuk.
Okay.
Yeah, because in a particular, like, because if it's up in the front, you're going to get some rounding with like a perfective, you know, like seo, you're going to get that sound a lot in the front of certain verbs.
Well, think about Auk Bay. The English writing AUK, but it's Auk, right? But they wouldn't have written it that way if they didn't hear it that way, I think. So I think the rounding came before the K. And when I say rounding, what I mean is your mouth is round, right? Your lips are round. So it's called rounding.
Okay.
So I think way back when, and I think it can come either before or after. It's kind of fishy, but I know that here in this area, we're always saying after.
That's a good point.
And the pinch too, the glottal stop. You know, there's studies have been done. But where does it happen in the middle of the k or before or after?
Okay. Yeah, because you're also going to get some variation. Like there's rounding on certain words that we don't expect it in a lot of the old recordings. We're like, huh, okay. So, yeah.
How much like vowel A should come after the KW? Because I feel like when you say like yak, there's almost like a W and then like quiet A at the end.
There's like a little breath, the little that comes. And so I like to say, like, you got a little tiny birthday candle and you're going to blow it out at the end of the word. Just so you remember to do that. Because, you know, nusk is you're just getting that right at the end. Because there are a couple of words like kushe, where it's still there, and then there's something that comes after it. Saknain, it's right there. And so what happens is people will end up saying kushe and sakunain, right? Where it's, right? But keeping that sort of on there is pretty important.
A little voiceless.
It is. It's a little voiceless, just a little breath of air through the pursed lips. Okay. So.
Seek.
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 Skeek.
Seek.
Eek.
Seek. Sha. Sha.
Sha.
Shaw.
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 Ta.
Ta.
Tia.
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 What are the two A's at the end? Does anybody know how that kind of stuff works? You get Tia and Una and other things like that.
do something with this? Like,
So there's a bunch of words in Tlingit that are going to end with this double A, and right before it you're going to have a verb root. So the verb root here is T. And what do you think that verb root means?
cut to chisel?
To chisel.
And then Ya is like the one that.
So this is the one that chisels. And so sometimes Tlingit will make, so there's a theory that Zeus has, James Crippen, that really, really old Tlingit words are very short. Yech, chak, tzik, hoots. They're all one-syllable words. They don't mean anything. They're just the name of that particular thing. Newer things that arrived, like, what are we going to call that thing? Ganda da goo goo, because it's going around and pecking on that wood, right? So the name for woodpecker in Tlingit translates to woodpecker, right? So it's kind of fun. It means like pecks around the wood. So it's what we call like a manufactured name. It means something. And then there's several of them that are like this. Hita, una, khasha, iya, right? And we'll see them. And we'll just talk about them as they pop up. Okay, we're at 7:30. We're stop. But Thursday we'll pick up here. So we'll do a little bit less of the grammar talk and more of just sort of pushing through this stuff. But by all means, when we start class, bring your questions, right? And I'll do my best to answer them. And sometimes we just got to come back. And the fourth or fifth time you look at something, it does make sense, right? It's a lot to take in because you're internalizing a whole grammar structure of it's an incredible language. It's rich, it's complex, it's complicated, and it's fun, but it's going to give you this whole other way of thinking, that's the fun part, is when you really start to think in Tlingit and analyze some different things. So, Yak echa, Gunichish, Yigoy Juan.
Seem to know more.
I forgot how cold these hands are. Oh.